How do you describe a sample set of data? Well, you do that with something called numerical summaries. And numerical summaries are values, usually single numbers, that essentially condense your data into one or possibly more meaningful values. And so in this lesson, we're going to learn about some numerical summaries that revolve around two aspects of a data set, and that is measures of center, so about where did the data tend to lie, and measures of spread, which is describing how scattered or spread out are the data values. You're also going to learn how to interpret them and be able to answer questions that utilize numerical summaries. So some of measures of center that we are going to focus on are listed in this table on the left side. You've got the mean, median, and mode, which are the most common. On the measure of spread side, which is the right side of the table, you'll have the range, the interquartile range, which is the IQR, variance and standard deviation. And the last two you're going to see for the rest of the course. So they are really important to understand what they are and how do you compute the variance and the range. So with that, let me get into some more specifics. And we'll focus on measures of center or central tendency first. And the mean, typically everyone is familiar with the mean, you just may not know it by that term. You tend to think of the word average in my experience. And to get an average, you add up the values and divide by the number of values that you added together. Now, it's not going to be possible to avoid notation. And so I've converted that language, that English, into mathematical notation, which you see in blue here. And so the average or mean is going to be denoted for now by an X with a bar on top, and you just simply call that X bar. And that is going to be called your sample mean. So sample mean is X bar, and you get that by adding up your data or summing up the X values. That symbol that looks like an E is the Greek symbol capital sigma. And you divide that sum by n, which is your sample size, or simply the amount of data that you have. And that's going to give you the mean. Median is the middle value after you put your data into ascending or descending order. It doesn't matter which way, you just have to choose one and stick with it. Personally, I prefer going from smallest to largest, but you could go in reverse if that's your inclination. So it has to be ordered, and then you take the middle value. The mode is going to be the most frequent observation. So you're going to look at which value or word or group occurs most often, and that'll be your mode. So that's describing the three measures of center. When would you use each? That's often a common question that I get. And what it comes down to is the following: if the data has outliers, so if there are observations that are unusual, they're not like most of the other data values, then use the median. And you'll see why in an example in just a minute. But if you don't really have outliers or not particularly extreme observations, then you could use the mean, and the mean is fine. If you have categorical data, however, remember categorical and qualitative are one and the same. So if you have categorical, then you should use the mode. And the reason is pretty simple. Remember, qualitative, it tends to be words or letters. And so you can't add red hair plus brown hair. You know, it doesn't make sense. But you can look at a data set of hair color and recognize that most of the participants had brown hair. So that would be your mode. All right, so let's consider this simple set of data that I've got here. I have two sets of data. X1 has the values 1, 2, and 3. And X2 has the values 1, 2, 3, and 94. So they're really, really similar with just one new value in the X2 column. And so that likely is an outlier, the number 94, just because most of the data is pretty small. And so we want to compute the mean for these. Remember, mean is average. So the average of the X1 column is 1 plus 2 is 3, plus the 3 value is 6. 6 divided by 3 values, 1, 2, and 3, is 2. And then if you do the same thing for the x2 column, you have 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 94. That sum should give you 100. And when you divide 100 by 4 values now, that's going to give you 25. And so here you could see that having that value of 94, that one new number, because the amount of data, 3 and 4, isn't very different, but having that one new unusual number brought about a pretty big change in the mean. It jumped from 2 to 25. What about the median? So let's start back with the x1 column. X1 is the middle value of the ordered data, and the data happens to be in order already. So with 1, 2, and 3, 2 is your middle value, so 2 is the median for the x1 column. The x2 column, though, has 4 values, so there isn't a middle number, but there's 2 middle numbers. 2 and 3 are perfectly in the middle of this even numbered data set. And so the median is going to be the average of those 2 middle values. So the average of 2 and 3 is 2.5. And so over here, you could see the medians of the 2 data sets. And hopefully you could identify that the median did not change a whole lot. It only went up by 0.5. It changed from 2 to 2.5, whereas the mean changed from 2 to 25. So this is why earlier, the top bullet that you see there, I said, if there are outliers, use the median. It's because the median is less influenced or affected by outliers or unusual observations, which is a good thing. And so that's why typically in practice, you might see the phrase that the median is more robust than the mean. And that's a good thing. You like robustness. So you want values that are unlikely or minimally affected by unusual observations. All right, so that's 2 quick examples demonstrating how to calculate and understand the influence of mean and median. Let's look at another 3 over here. So I've got 3 new data sets, x1, x2, and x3. And x1 has 4 values, x2 has 6, and x3 also has 6, 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6, yep. And so we want to get the mode. Remember, mode is the most frequent observation. And you'll see that in the x1 column, each value only occurred the same number of times. So there's nothing that's most frequent. So the mode for this first data set is that there isn't any, it doesn't exist. But then for the second data set, you could see that I highlighted that there are 2 values that occur most frequently. 1 and 5 both occur twice. 3 and 8 only once each. So there are most frequent observations. There happens to be more than 1. In fact, 1 and 5 are going to be your modes. So whereas earlier you only had 1 mean and 1 median, here you could see you could have none, 2, or for that third data set, x3 column, 1. Or you could even have 3 or more modes. So mode isn't restricted to just 1 value. It is however many are the most frequent. And that's an important distinction with respect to the mode, is that the mean and median, you only have 1 value for each, but the mode, you have 0 or more. That's different. Now let's talk about measures of spread. Actually, you know what? Why don't you pause here and tackle the first 2 problems on the handout. Give yourself about 10 minutes. When you're ready, start the video back up. Okay, so hopefully you took advantage of that opportunity to practice on your own. Let's go through these first 2. And so this first one is about E. coli bacteria in laboratories, and you've got a number of observations here, 16 observations of counts of E. coli levels in water, and you are asked to find the mean. And so the mean over here mean and range are both found as follows. You should have added up the 16 numbers and gotten the sum of 900.5. When you divide by 16, which again is your n, your sample size, you get 56.28. And so that is your mean. The range, and I know we didn't talk about the range yet, but you may be familiar with it. Range is going to be the total span of your data. So it's how far the smallest value is from the biggest one. And so if you do 291, which is your largest value, minus 1, which is the smallest value in the sample, you get 290. And that's your range. Number 2, here you want to try find the median travel time for 15 North Carolina workers. And the data set were not in order on your handout, but you could see in green that I did order it. And again, my preference is to go smallest to largest, which I did. And you're looking for the middle value. And so here you have 15. And so the middle value is a single number, and it's going to be the 8th value. And so as you go through and you're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it looks like that middle value is 20. And so let me remove here what we've got. And so I have a median of 20. I did go ahead and just to check myself or have an idea of how skewed this might be, I did compute the sample mean, which wasn't asked for, but I did it anyway, and got 22.46, the 6 repeating. And the mode, if you wanted just for practice to get it, the mode is going to be the most frequent observation. You could see that 10 occurs most often. In fact, it occurs 4 times. No other value occurs that often. So hopefully you did all right with the ones you were supposed to compute. Whether you did or didn't, pause the video again and tackle the 3rd problem here. This one asks you to get the mean, median, and mode. All right, so hopefully you have finished problem 3 and are choosing to continue on. And so in this case, again, you want to find the mean, median, and mode. And so the mean, you should add up these 20 values. You'll notice on the left side that I wrote down that n equals 20. It's good to get used to appropriate notation. N equals 20, so you add up these values, you divide by 20, and you should get 31.25, I believe. And here I show the work for how I got there. And then the median is going to be the middle value, but because you have 20 observations, an even number, the middle value is going to be an average of the middle 2. So that's going to be the average of the 10th and 11th values. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so that's going to be these two, and that average is 22.5, which is what you see there. And again, the reasoning is what I just spoke through. And then finally, you want the mode, and the mode is going to be the most frequent observation. I see 2 10s, I see 4 15s, so 15 seems to win so far, 3 20s, 2 30s, 2 40s, 2 60s. And so it looks like 15 is the most common observation. And that should be your mode. So hopefully you got it. If not, look through this. I'm going to stop the video here, and the next video will cover measures of spread.